The Hungry Caterpillar is my favourite children's book, and it's a popular theme for first birthday parties. I'm going to decorate a cake with the food from the book using buttercream frosting and gel food colours. I've given my cake a crumb coat, and now I'm applying a final coat of frosting. If you're new to cake decorating, I cover all of the steps to getting this far in my tutorial How to Build a Cake. There's a link on the screen and in the description box below. For my final coat of frosting, I'm making sure the sides are straight and smooth, using an offset spatula to apply the frosting and a bench scraper to smooth it. Now I'm chilling the cake in the fridge for at least 30 minutes so the frosting sets and it's nice and firm. Before making the food that the Hungry Caterpillar eats, I'm preparing the holes in the food. I'm using a piece of wax paper and drawing a little circle around a frosting piping tip. Then I'm folding the wax paper, again and again and again, and then cutting out the circle to make lots of little circles. I'll use these in a minute. I'm using a plate as a palette and squirting on different gel food colours. I'll use these to paint the food onto my cake. I'm just using basic colours: yellow, green, red, blue, purple, black and brown, and I'll mix them to make all of the colours I need. It's helpful to have a lot of paintbrushes for this, so you don't have to wash them after using each colour. And also different sizes are helpful for different parts of the food. To give you an idea of how I mixed my colours for this cake, here's my plate palette. Now that my cake is chilled, the frosting is hard and I can paint onto it without damaging it. I'm sticking on a little wax paper circle and then painting an apple over the top. I'll peel off the wax paper circle at the end, and it will have kept the frosting white where the hole is. I'm using a fairly large paintbrush with red gel food colour for the apple, starting with a heart shape and then filling it in. I'm leaving space down here on the bottom right for some green shading. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please click the thumbs up button. I share a new cake decorating tutorial every week, so if you want to see more videos, please subscribe to my channel, British Girl Bakes. Painting on a brown stalk, and adding some brown highlights around the top and bottom of the apple, also using my brown paintbrush. A little patch of green down here, and for now my apple is finished. Next, I'm painting a pear. After placing my wax paper circle on the cake, I'm using a paintbrush dipped in green gel food colour to outline the pear, and then filling it in with green, and painting some parts with green mixed with yellow to lighten it up. Using my brown paintbrush for the stalk, and switching out to a thinner brush to be able to paint the tip of the stem more neatly. I'm leaving the wax paper circles on the cake until I've chilled the cake again and the food colours have dried. Now I'm painting a plum, starting with purple and then adding blue and black. I love the style of the food in the Hungry Caterpillar because the shading is very patchy, so it's easy to replicate on a cake. You definitely don't have to be an artist to do this. I'm terrible at drawing and painting, but with the book beside me as a reference and a plate full of colours, it's easy to do. Just start with an outline, fill it in with the main colour, and then add shading with any other colours you see on the food in the book. This is the pickle with a bumpy outline and little dots of dark greeny brown, which are the bumps on the pickle. Watermelon with a lighter tip and darker base and a green rind, and then some black seeds painted on last. An orange, painted dark orange with a brown stem, a little leaf, and tiny brown and green flecks on the peel. A little strawberry, with green tufty leaves and little black flecks. And my paintbrush is starting to leave little indents in the frosting, which means the frosting is getting soft, so I'm chilling my cake for 20 minutes in the fridge and then coming back to it. A slice of Swiss cheese, with holes around the edge and in the middle, and a rind painted on with yellow mixed with brown. I'm using the same colour with a bit more yellow added to lighten it, to add some shading on the cheese. Now the piece of cherry pie, starting with the crust, and then painting on the filling using different shades of red and purple. A sausage, with little bunches of casing at each end, and a cupcake. Starting with the top, and then painting on the wrapper with a blue outline and blue lines down the wrapper to make the creases. And then when almost all of the blue food colour has come off my brush, I'm adding some dabs of colour for shading, which looks like light blue because there's so little colour on my brush. Finally, I'm painting on the very hungry caterpillar. He's made up of round sections of lots of different shades of green. I'm starting with yellow for the lightest parts, giving myself a guideline of where to paint over with all of the shades of green. At the same time, I'm painting on the yellow parts of the eyes. Now I'm painting on my first shade of green in random sections along the body of the caterpillar. I've made this light green by adding a bit of green to my yellow. Now some darker green, which I'm making by adding more green to the yellow, and some even darker green, and some even darker green. Little brown feet, which are just L shapes at each end of his body, and then a red head, painting carefully around the yellow eyes. I recommend painting on the eyes first because it gives you a guide of how much space to leave for them. If you paint the red first and try to leave enough space for the eyes, you'll probably end up with teeny tiny eyeballs. I'm leaving a little triangle for the nose and painting it in with brown. Little green dots for the centres of the eyes, and then purple antennae. At this point, I've decided my caterpillar is too skinny, so I'm bulking him up by painting a bit more colour around the edges of the sections of his body. And there he is, the very hungry caterpillar, who looks like he's been eating his way through all of the food on the cake. I'm chilling the cake one more time, and now I can take off the wax paper circles. I'm using my knife to lift up the edge of a circle, and then gently peeling it off, leaving a white circle of frosting underneath. Some of the gel food colours have managed to get underneath the wax paper, so the circles aren't perfectly smooth yet. But because the cake is cold, it's easy to use the knife to gently scrape off any colour from the white circles, leaving the white frosting behind. After tidying up the holes in all of the food, the painted cake is finished. This is optional, but I'm rolling out some white fondant to make a number 1 to place on the top of my cake. I'm rolling it thinner at the top and leaving it thicker at the base to make it easier to insert a toothpick, which I'll eventually skewer into the cake to help the one stand upright. I've mixed a generous pinch of Tylose powder with my fondant so it'll dry quickly and hold its shape. It's easier to put the toothpick into the fondant now. If you put it in after cutting out your shape, it might distort the shape a bit. I'm cutting out the one with a sharp knife, tidying up the edges with the knife blade, and then leaving it to dry for about an hour. Then, using the leftover colours from my palette, I'm painting the one with the same style of patchy colouring as the food on my cake. I'm pushing my number 1 into the top of the cake, and it's ready. If you make this cake, please tag me in your photos on Facebook or Instagram so I can see your cake. Thanks for watching! Subscribe to my channel for more cake decorating tutorials.